Hi, Brady. Jeff here. I've been seeing a lot of posts on LinkedIn about the f- go, some companies in the language industry. I'll specifically say the language industry, moving to a 4-day work week, um, and that's been specified. A number of CEOs that are doing this of some of the smaller companies, smaller language service providers, LSPs, that are kind of moving to a 4-day work week. And a 4-day work week doesn't mean that everybody gets the same day off. Basically, they said that it means that they're kind of rotating around and letting people take off the day at different, have their day off at a different days of the week, and so that they're continuing to provide service for 5 days of the week of their what they're doing. And of course, production's happening. And I want to say this, and I think this is really important. The production is actually having 7 days a week, right? 24 hours a day. There's no way that any of the service providers can be just doing things during 8 hours a day, production wise. Okay. And I'm going to specify why I think this is important, or why this works and doesn't work, right? But the whole thing that's important is that the language service providers, what they're doing is they're providing project management. I mean, people talked about Renato's talked about this a lot. That what and others have talked about too. Um, but Renato has talked a lot about this. The fact that the service that language service providers are providing is not translation words. It's project management. It's managed project management, multilingual project management. And I think that's a key thing to understand here. And so what these service providers are doing is they're providing project management service, right? During certain time frames. But the production that's happening behind the scenes, because most of them, some of them do have in-house people, but most of them, everyone is outsourcing, right? To people all over the world for, let's say, 50 plus languages, because when you start getting to the 100 languages, it's pretty tough. Yeah, you can have people, but you're not getting a lot of people per language, right? Some language per pair is kind of complicated. So let's say 50 plus languages. And so it's a project management service that these service providers are able to provide. But they are relying on people behind the scenes that are usually outsourced contractors to do the actual production work. And I think this is really clear and really important to understand for the 4-day work week topic. 4-day work week. um, this is nothing new. I work in France. I've been working in France for the past 3 decades. The majority of the past 3 decades, let's say 3 decades minus 33, 34 years minus 4.5 years, right? Maybe 5 years. When I worked back in the States, back and forth, but the past 3 plus decades. And 2 decades ago, I remember when France, the national law legislation was put into place to have they don't talk about a 4-day work week. They call it about the 35-hour work week, right? And so it was rather than 39 hours, it was 35 hours. Now, not everybody works 39 hours, but this is kind of, they basing on the fact that people work 39 hours, right? And you're punching right in the system. And um, I don't know any job that I worked really only 35, 39 hours a week. Now, there have been times I've had those kinds of weeks, right? But there are times when what you're doing is, you're managing a lot of things that are kind of international. You're working with all time zones. It doesn't quite always work that way. But you're flexible. You have a flexible schedule, and this is the key thing. Flexible schedule is different than just working a work week, right? So the key thing here is, and then what France put into place was the 35-hour work week, and some governments and bigger administrations, they also put into the 32-hour work week. Okay, and people would kind of semi-retire or do pre-retirement by moving from a 39-hour work week to a 35, and then from 35 to a 32-hour work week. Okay, I've got friends that have done that. Another thing to consider in this 4-day work week thing is the fact that there is another 4-day work week principle in France, which a lot of a lot of females do this. It's the fact that the school system is based on Wednesdays. Uh, Wednesday is either a full day off for kids. Wednesdays and Saturdays you don't go to school. Well, Sundays either. Well, Saturday's actually half the day. So what happens is Wednesdays is off for elementary school children. Then when you get to the junior high school and high school, it can be half a day. So you only go for half the day, right? And high school, maybe it stops doing that, right? But the kids are off. So it kind of this creates a system where a lot of mothers, and and that's just a fact. I'm not trying to say it's only women. There are men can do this too, right? But a lot of women, I have a lot of female colleagues for many, many, many years that they're not available on Wednesdays because they take Wednesdays off because school, their kids are in school. They have kids, young kids, so they want to be home. They won't have to pay for babysitting and childcare when they're at work. I mean, it costs a lot, so they take Wednesdays off to be able to manage that. So this whole 4-day work week actually has existed in France for as long as I can remember working for the past 3 decades. Plus, you add to that the 39 to 35-hour work week. That kind of adds to this whole thing, adds another layer on top of it. And so the pros and cons, and the pros and cons of this I'll kind of quickly mention. I'll come to why this would work in this industry, and what's going to work for the language service provider industry and won't work for others. I think this is the key thing, because I don't think this is universally applicable for every single company. I think we got to be careful of when saying it's going to be successful or not, because there are times when it doesn't work. So the key thing here that I've seen is that it works well in big companies and big institutions, governments, big companies, and all that. It doesn't really work very well in small startups and small businesses, especially, small independent businesses. It doesn't really work trying to go to a 4-day work week. I mean, and women, it doesn't matter if you're woman or man. You find other ways to do it because you got to keep your business running, right? So, and I'll say that for small versus large business. I think that's a key thing. Now, I'm talking in general, and I'm talking about a lot of people facing jobs, retail, restaurants. If you try to go to 4-day week, forget it, right? Now, you can try to rotate people, but when you're on a small independent business, you run your own thing. I had the music store down the road. I mean, you can't do it a 4-day work week and no one survive, right? Because you got to be selling stuff, right? And you're facing people. You're dealing with people. It's customer relationship, and when you're working in bigger things, we call this account management, right? Strategic account management. What do you want to call it? Now, this is the key. If you're doing selling and salespeople, if you say we're going to do 4-day work weeks, now forget it. I mean, that just makes one day less they can work on their quota, right, per week. That doesn't quite work very well for people that need to keep the company moving, and they want to get their objectives and they want to get their bonuses, right? So I'll come to that is this 4-day work week thing can work better with people that tend to be sedentary, don't have to go out and work with customers all the time. They don't have to worry, and they don't have to worry about revenue and stuff, and they can be working on the internal production processes, right? Whatever you want to call this, and especially project management. This is where I think it's really key. And production, again, it depends on what company. Now, I'm going to come back to the language service industry because the production happens 7 days a week with all these external providers that are all working crazy hours. Well, crazy hours like all-nighters and stuff, but then they're not working during the day on some things because they might be able to take care of the kids. Because that's the thing of the lives freelancers. They can have a flexible schedule, right? So they can kind of determine what projects they take based on doing it in different times and when other people are sleeping, they're working, right? So. And they don't get to take vacation the same as everybody else does, but they get to have their vacation when everybody else. So they get the beaches when no one else is there, right? Let's say it that way. But I think the key thing here And I think this is something that is it's tweaking the data when I see companies that say, yeah, this works well for us, and it'll work. I In the language industry again, because it's a service industry where it's project management. Really, you're only providing an administrative service, right? You're only providing an administrative service. The production is actually happening by the people that are working for you, and they're not getting a 4-day week work, right? They're working their rear end off, but they get to take time off other times, right? Kind of, depending how hungry they are, right? So this is kind of, and depending how much they're paid, and depending how much they ask for, and depending on what kind of projects they get, and how well managed the projects are from the different providers. Because a lot of these, they're, a lot of these freelancers work for several different providers, right? They don't work for one. So they're kind of just trying to do their own management of their own, you know, vendor management systems, and trying to do that because most of them aren't working for directly with the companies, because companies want to kind of go through service providers. Not always. It kind of depends. So I think that this 4-day work week in the language services industry, that is a project management focused industry. All these service providers are providing project management. Like I said, if you might have production people inside the company in-house translators, but that's usually very specialized stuff, very, very specialized, very niche. The majority of them they're working with they're outsourcing it to people, right? So the whole production process is not 4-day work week, and I think that's where it's not quite being represented fully. And yeah, if you rotate people around, if you have people take a day off a week during a work week, Monday, Friday, which in other countries it can be, it can be uh, Tuesday, Saturday, right? So it kind of depends, or whatever. I mean, different different countries do things. Actually, France, Monday and Sunday and Monday are off for a lot of retail business and stuff, and they start on Tuesdays. So, and then you can think about how Israel does it, and how other Arabic-speaking countries do it. I mean, they're different work weeks because of the whole religious, the whole religious system in some of these countries are based on Friday and Saturday off, right? So it's kind of a different thing. Or Friday and Saturday are off, and then Sunday you're working, or whatever. It kind of depends on how the country and the cultural things happen, right? So I think that this 4-day work week thing, I think it's kind of a hype cycle. I think it's going to go through a period of time. That I think the whole COVID and the confinement, the lockdown thing, created where you could actually work from home. These types of jobs, not people in retail, right? Not people that are customer facing, not people that are in hospitals, not people that are. It won't work for those people. And I know a lot of people that work really in hospitals and stuff. They don't get it for it. They work more, right? In 50 hours, I talked with people last week when they're saying that they had worked 50 hours. And I said, oh, 50 hours is nothing, right? Kind of joking. Yeah, but 50 hours in a hospital is a killer. And I agree with that. I can work 80 hours or more in a job that I can be behind a computer or having to be able to take a lot of breaks and stuff. I'm not saying that I always do that. Maybe I do. I don't know. Sometimes I don't count it. But the fact that I got a very flexible schedule, and actually might be thinking, I might be actually sitting down in front of a computer 8 hours a week, but I might be thinking about things, and actually thinking about things while I'm driving a car is important, because that helps me think and to work on the computer later on, right? So, whereas a lot of people in these retail or government public service kind of jobs, they have to be there at a certain time, and they're trying to the whole logistics people trying to keep everybody with a schedule is kind of important. But in the language service industry, I think there's I don't think it's sustainable. That's my point of view, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm right. I don't think it's sustainable, because it's going to create an expectation that people want to always have to work a 4-day work week, and I don't try to impose time schedules on any of my employers or things. I just say I want something flexible. If you give me something flexible, you allow me to be able to do the stuff, right? But that means that there are places I won't work, and some people I won't work for. But if you give me a flexible schedule, I'll make it rock, right? And I think, but that's always in see my video about conformism-based traditional values and stuff. I mean, a lot of the places they want to have it set and standardized and stuff, but it doesn't always work for everything. So I think it's really key here to look at the LSPs, language service providers, that it's going to create a kind of an expectation, and then people will only want to work, and you're small, right? When you're small, family sized, it works. Watch out when you start getting big, because when you start getting unions, people start joining unions, and then the unions will be fighting for having more time off. And I've seen that in France. I've seen it in France. In fact, I've seen a lot more here. Boy, in the States, unions don't work well, except when you work at big industry stuff. Like I worked at Caterpillar, and the unions just killed stuff, right, for this type of workers. But the thing is, when you start working it depends on if it's a blue collar, white collar kind of stuff, right? I think this really is a key thing too. Uh, and I think it will work in white collar jobs, project management. Yeah, it'll work until you get big. And then you start getting big and you have to sell more, it doesn't quite work. And I think I think there's a point of diminishing returns. And I think it's kind of key to kind of find that point in time. And I think it might work in the smaller ones. But in project management. But production behind is happening for 7 hours, 7 days a week. It's just happening all the time. So it kind of depends. And I'm creating a lot of debate here, and I'm not saying I'm right, and I'm not saying that others are wrong. I want to clarify that. I'm just saying that it will work in certain contexts, certain scenarios where it's amenable and conducive, favorable. But when you start getting bigger, it's going to have a thing. And I've worked in a lot of small companies that became big, right? Micom, we were doubling the size every year and adding another country every year. And the things that we were able to do with a very flexible thing at the beginning, or we had flexibility of things, and then we couldn't be as flexible later on because we had to have it so more. Everybody's kind of following kind of the guidelines, things more. So it was kind of come through that, and I've seen where things work smaller, and then it's just a certain point, and it's about 100 people, kind of around 100 people, it starts changing. There's no set, hard, fast rule, set figure. It's not set in stone, but you can kind of see it happening. And especially if you bring a lot of people that are small company minded, that works. There's a lot of posts about that. Can people from big companies come work in startups, or can people in startups go work in big companies? It's kind of, there are different mindsets and cultural mindsets and cultural mindsets in the working place and how you do things. But I think that affects a lot too. It all comes down to culture. And if your culture works and you're able to do it in a 4-day work week, great. It won't always work that way. And I think I'm kind of warning people to not believe it'll always work. I think you just have to really find, can it work for you and with your teams? So sorry, that's like more than almost 20 minutes, but I'm kind of giving a bunch of examples, and I think it's to kind of explain this because I don't think it's so simple. I don't think there's a single one size fits all rule to this, and I think that's really key to determining if it's gonna work for you or not, and it will work for you for long term or short midterm. So have a good day.